Welcome to our webinar on strengthening hospital data breach defense for our hospitals and healthcare organizations. My name is Tommy McDowell. I'm General Manager here at Celerium, and I'll be the host and keeping us on track and on time today. I'm joined by John Riggy, National Advisor for Cybersecurity and Risk with American Hospital Association. Welcome, John. And Vince Chrysler, who is our Chief Information Security Officer. He's also a former White House Chief Information Security Officer. We have Carl Kolet, who is our Chief Solutions Officer, and then Jeffrey Vincent, who is an Executive Advisor for us here at Celerium. And for the agenda, we'll set the stage with a brief introduction, and from there we're going to move into industry challenges that everybody's facing, especially the AI data breach arms race. And there we're going to look at specifically at AI-powered threat actors, AI-powered data breaches, and how both are dramatically increasing the speed and sophistication that our attacks that are targeting hospitals. And then we'll shift to the data breach detection and containment and focus on what hospitals are potentially missing during those early stages of breach activity. We'll talk a little bit about third-party breaches. And of course, those become more and more critical as they're an attack vector into the hospital itself. Then we'll bring it all together and have questions at the bottom. And as I mentioned earlier, there is a little Q&A box down at the bottom of Zoom. Feel free to post your question there as we go. And lastly, if you want to start, go ahead and using the Data Breach Defender solution. We have a 60-day trial, and I'm going to have Alex post a link in the chat. You can go ahead and sign up for that chat now and get started as quick as you want to. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started to the next slide. And of course, a little bit about Celerium. We've been in the cybersecurity engineering, developing power different type solutions now for about 19 years. And I think we've developed products in just about every critical sector in the US. And with our data breach defender solution, that's really targeted at our healthcare industry. And also, we are a community service partner for the Health Rights Act. We're a Chime Foundation member, a HIMSS corporate member, and an American Hospital Association preferred vendor. And of course, John, you played a great role in helping us achieve that status. And I'm sure everybody on the call knows him as the National Advisor for Cyber and Risk with the American Hospital Association. John also is a 28-year veteran with the FBI, a leading cybersecurity voice representing the nation's hospitals and health systems, especially during the 2024 Change Healthcare cyber attack. So thank you, John. We're excited to be part of the community. And for those on the call that may not be aware of the preferred vendor program, maybe you could speak to that just a little bit and the significance of the approval we have.
Sure, Tommy. Thanks again for the presentation here today and for becoming one of our preferred providers. This program started several years ago based on our commentary and feedback from the field, asking us to help distinguish between this vast array of cybersecurity providers that are out there. Quite frankly, they were asking us, John, help us distinguish signal from noise, help us identify those good providers that have good solutions that not only are interested in just sales, but service to the community, and that which represents our philosophy as well. So we approached, actually, I think you all came to us about a year ago. Yeah. You had a really intriguing solution, great experience in the defense industrial base. But we worked with you over the past year to help develop the requisite bona fides and experience in healthcare specifically, in which you achieved this year. So we're proud to have you on board and share some of that experience you have in the defense industrial base and in other sectors to help us defend hospitals and health systems from all manner of cyber attacks. So thank you and congratulations for joining our team.
Yeah, thank you, John. Okay, let's jump right in. Vince, take it away.
Thanks, Tommy. To start off, let's talk a little bit about the difference between kind of regulatory data breaches and technical data breaches. It's a big word, so let's get specific. Regulatory data breaches are defined by federal and state requirements. For example, under HHS and HIPAA rules, any breach involving more than 500 records must be disclosed within 60 days. Certain states are even more strict, such as New York, which requires disclosure in 30 days, and California requires disclosure in just 15 days. Hospitals also have contractual obligations through their business associate agreements or BAAs with third-party suppliers. These contracts typically require those vendors to report data breaches within 3 to 5 days, which in many cases echoes or reinforces part of the regulatory requirements. On the technical side of the data breach world, we're talking about the actual loss of data. This is the real world behavior of breaches, how they occur, how long they take to detect, and how they progress over time. So a technical data breach will turn into a regulatory data breach. Resources like IBM Cost of the Data Breach Report and Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, the DBIR, focus on the technical flavor of data breaches and give us years of data that highlight trends, root causes, and technical patterns behind some of the modern data breaches. So our focus is specifically on technical data breaches, not the broad category of all cyber incidents, but the breaches that occur within the hospital's clinical network servers. These are the servers that store and move a majority of the patient's EPHI. And according to a lot of reports, they account for over 50% of all data breach activity that we see in the healthcare sector. These include systems like PACS, radiology, laboratory, pharmacy, and other clinical systems that routinely exchange EPHI. And that's where the real exposure is, and that's where Data Breach Defender focuses its protection. So we're not really covering email breaches. We're not looking at kind of specific workstations, Windows issues. We're not looking at medical device breaches. These are important, because this is where the bulk of the large volume EPHI theft is happening. This is all about protecting clinical systems that represent the highest technical data breach risk. With that as a background, let me go to Jeffrey real quick to talk about the data breach lifecycle. Jeffrey, can you walk us through what the data breach lifecycle typically looks like within the hospital environment?
Thanks a lot, Vince. So again, folks, we're here talking about data breaches, and we all know that a data breach is why we talked about it being technical. We know it involves more than just IT. So we know it involves everywhere from the lowest clinical staff to the chief medical officer, compliance, privacy, the HIMSS folks as well. But when we look at the life cycle, we certainly understand about the risk assessments that we do to make sure things are coming in and there's an acceptable level of risk to the organization. We look at those cyber preventative fields that we do, your patch management, your multi-factor authentication, things of that nature. And certainly we're talking about that post-breach. When you have a security incident, now there's a breach, we look at those pieces, but what Celerium is focusing in is on those gaps, that early stage detection, being able to say there's a probable or possible activity that's going on that could lead to a breach. And then, of course, we're talking about containment. Typically, you hear when there's an event at your organization, ransomware or something like that, they shut off the internet. We certainly want to be able to not have that happen. We want to have that surgical containment. So Celerium is laser focused on those gaps that are there, early stage detection, and also the early containment, surgical containment, if you will, when it comes to talking about breaches. Of course, we know healthcare is still one of the top industries out there that's being attacked. You heard about Change Health last year, 190 plus million records. So this is what we want to get out in front of. So as you hear about this with these breaches, Vince, I'm going to ask you, as the threat actors increase their ability to create cyber and data breach attacks, how have they been improving their capabilities?
That's a great question, Jeffrey. And I think if you look at cybersecurity from a defensive standpoint, it feels like not much has changed over the last 5 or 10 years. Tools have gotten a little bit better, kind of fancier capabilities have come out. But where the challenge has happened is on the threat side. And I've got 2 slides here that kind of complement each other. This first slide starts to show the gap in what we're calling the data breach arms race. So this evolution from the 2015 timeframe to 2027 and beyond, where we're looking at commodity attacks in what we'll describe as the post-prevention era, to criminal infrastructure, first generation AI, AI-assisted evasion, and then AI automated defensive invasion. And you'll see kind of that difference between the offense and the defense getting wider and wider. To talk about that a little bit more detailed, when we look at this from a threat actor standpoint, starting in around 2015 to 2020, threat actors the focus was really buying toolkits and capabilities on the dark web. There was this marketplace, you could go on there, you could buy the tools you need. But as time evolved, what people found out is there's a lot of money to be made in running the infrastructure of an attack. And so you started to see these ransomware as a service things pop up where, you wanted to execute ransomware, you could hire a group to help you engage in that ransomware. As we look at 23 and 24, the evolution of LLMs and generative AI took these threat actors that probably weren't very good in speaking English for the most part and All the training in corporate America said, look for misspellings, look for issues. This generative AI now let them look very professional and know exactly what they were talking about. And it was a big leap forward in phishing attacks. Also, the ability to write malware and do reconnaissance using some of these capabilities was just significantly automated. Now, as we're looking now, there was just a news report about the use of AI for a massive large-scale attack. So an automated attack campaign enabled by LLM and generative AI. The numbers are hard to pin down, but some of the largest threat actor groups out there, the criminal groups, may be making up to $500 million a year with an 80% margin, which means they're making $400 million in profit. Now, they're buying Lambos, but they're also reinvesting that back in security tools and capabilities because they know the better they get, the more successful they are. Kind of where we're headed in the future, it's very dangerous. So stage 5 in the 2026 to 2027 window, this is where things become genuinely dangerous. And we're talking about AI-driven automated defense evasion. At this stage, AI is not only able to automatically identify, but circumvent, degrade, or neutralize what defenses are in place, using tools like EDR killers, affecting the data that's going into your SIM, managing the identity, or affecting your identity management systems, everything. It can disable or blind sensors, manipulate or rewrite logs, remove evidence, and it's all about maintaining stealth without a human operator driving those actions. And it's a real impact on the industry. So this is pervasive use of automated defense evasion. Existing defenses such as the two-factor authentication, EDR, MDR, all of these tools that are out there are great and necessary, but they're table stakes. They're not enough. Kind of at the top end here, what we're talking about is we used to talk about threat actors on a range from hobbyists to nation state actors that could get in and stay in a network for a long period of time. AI is letting that hobbyist become a nation state actor quality of threat actor. Before we go any further, John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we're talking about here about how threat actors have evolved and what's going on in the environment.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. Totally agree with everything that you're saying here. And unfortunately, we can speak from firsthand knowledge. The attacks are definitely increasing, not only in a linear rate, but in an exponential rate. We do believe that AI is playing a role in that, really increasing the frequency, severity, and complexity of the attacks for certain. And quite frankly, again, the adversary use of AI is far exceeding our capabilities on defensive use of AI. And I am very concerned about that very specific line you have there, where we have ordinary run-of-the-mill cyber actors that now have advanced persistent threat level capability, meaning nation state capability. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea level capability. And we have seen evidence that they are in fact colluding and exchanging knowledge and capabilities, including use of AI for cyber attacks.
Very good. Thank you, John. Hey, Vince, from an interesting point there from the defender's perspective, right? Tell us what this data breach arm race, what's the impact of that to the defenders? And by that, I mean the hospital security IT, technology vendors, and of course, their service providers.
It's not great. I mean, for those of you on the call today that are in a defensive role, I'm sure every day is a struggle. We just walked through kind of that evolution of threat actors. But on the defender standpoint, when you look at your security organization, the vendors, providers that you use, we've also gone through an evolution. 5 to 10 years ago, people started to say at these conferences, it's not if, it's when, right? So we kind of were entering this post-prevention area where you kind of started to assume that your preventive measures, your security controls were going to be okay, but they weren't going to stop a breach. And then as we evolved, we kind of got into this resilience mindset of, hey, we've got to live through a breach. We've got to make sure we can survive. We've got to make sure our systems stay up and running. As we've evolved from there, we're in this like post blind spot area, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about what this means here in a minute. But we have blind spots in our network that are really hard to fix, especially in healthcare. And so we have to recognize that not only are we kind of lost some of the prevention capability, we have to assume breach, but we also have blind spots. And then you add on all of this, the fact that every IT security organization out there is overwhelmed. Your organization, I'm sure, most organizations do not spend millions and millions of dollars and have massive armies of security people that you need to protect your networks. And so you're under budget, underfunded, and not enough people. So as we go to the next slide here, let's talk a little bit more about some of these strengths and blind spots. When EDR, MDR, XDR, kind of this whole segment of security tools provides a lot of value. They can protect hundreds or thousands of hospital workstations and mobile devices that are under attack hundreds or thousands times a week all the time. These tools are very good for providing protection, but they have blind spots. Not only can EDR, MDR killers come in and kind of disable those devices and stop them from reporting, but they're also challenged with many of the clinical department systems, which don't always accept an EDR agent. If you look there on the left-hand side, there are lots of blind spots in your network today, from legacy systems that can't be patched, other sensitive systems that you're not comfortable putting an agent on, things like PCI terminals or personal owned systems from a physician that you may not feel comfortable putting an EDR, MDR on, and medical devices. So the bottom line here is there are data breach blind spots. And when IT solutions and vendors are blind to some of the above clinical systems, that means they may also be blind to possible data breach activity.
Yeah, thank you, Vince. I mean, you can look at the slide here, and I mean that visual is very compelling. I mean that's very revealing, the gap that is occurring there. And John, any additional comments you see from your perspective on the industry about the industry's keeping up with this arms race?
Well, there's a couple of factors. One that, Vince, you mentioned about the financial pressures that the industry is facing, especially with these pending Medicaid cuts and then cuts to drug discount funding. All this is creating pressure, which limits the hospital's ability and resources to keep up with the bad guys. As you said, they have almost virtually unlimited resources to buy the latest technology and equipment. Bottom line, though, they are hospitals and health systems. All of us are using AI to detect vulnerabilities within our networks, unpatched internet facing and including on servers, and also to detect anomalous behavior within our networks. Because the bad guys, especially those advanced persistent threats, nation states, sophisticated criminals, are using living off the land techniques, which would evade normal detection. And then, of course, commingling malicious traffic with non-malicious traffic, which makes their activity much harder to detect. So that's where we're trying to rely on AI to try to help keep up where we can with the bad guys' AI capabilities.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Next slide there. And this slide is for those we have on the call that may come from the compliance side of the house or privacy experts that are attending today. Of course, we talk a lot about Data Breach Defender. It also can help and address HIPAA and state regulatory requirements for hospitals. How it can also improve your third-party suppliers and business associates who have to conform to your business associate agreements. And as a foundation to further this discussion on the data breach defense solution, four problems specifically that stand out to us that are addressed. One, to help overloaded IT security organizations, fast-track implementation, automation, and autonomous operation. Second is how to deal with that post-prevention era beyond the MFA. I read more exploits coming out taking advantage of MFA. Some I saw this morning. How we deal with post-intrusion era when threat actors are already in your system. And then how do we deal with post-blind spots, the blind spots that are already there? In other words, those blind spots that hinder your detection. And just to mention also again too, I had some notes come across. People are wanting to sign up for the trial already, which is great. And I think in the chat we have the link. You just sign there, and we'll be glad to get you started on that trial. Okay, so we want to address those key issues in 5 stages. And Vince, I'm going to throw this over to you because you had to deal with the same issue at DoD with the contractors, especially dealing with overloaded organizations. Can you take that conversation a little further down the road for us?
Absolutely. As you mentioned at the very beginning, Celerium has been around a long time in the cybersecurity game and has done a lot of really interesting work. And the solution for Data Breach Defender was actually not designed for healthcare. As you heard, we're relatively new to the healthcare market. We've made a lot of great progress, had a lot of great feedback from hospitals and healthcare systems that we're working with. It was actually designed originally to support the defense industrial base in partnership with the Department of Defense. And the defense industrial base has a very sophisticated challenge, which is they're being targeted by sophisticated nation-state actors, advanced persistent threats, that are targeting the information that they have that's critical to the DoD. And they were having significant challenges scaling the sharing and detection and discovery and reporting of that information, and then doing automated blocking and protection on the back end. And so this solution was purpose built for that problem set. We've been working with the DoD for over 8 years now with great success. Have had a lot of great fun with that partnership, and it's a really cool mission. And so, rest easy knowing that this solution is not a new solution, even though it may be relatively new in the healthcare market. It has been proven in some of the toughest of conditions. Now, the question is, how does this actually get set up? One of the challenges we had on the DoD supply chain side was around the defense industrial base companies. A lot of them are relatively small companies, and so it needed to be simple and easy to deploy. So our solution can be up and running in 30 minutes or less. And all you have to do for your healthcare IT team is to connect your existing firewall to our Data Breach Defender decision engine that's running up in AWS Government Cloud. And this is a matter of sending logs of your traffic data to us for processing. And clearly I want to emphasize here that there's no hardware, no software, no agents. There's nothing to install in your hospital environment to make this work. Once that firewall connection's made, Data Breach Defender begins working immediately. And you'll begin to see initial data in about 5 minutes or less. It starts to populate. And by the next day, the system already provides a lot more rich insights into what your servers are actually to where your clinical servers are actually sending patient data. So in just a half an hour, you can go from zero visibility to very meaningful visibility. Now, earlier I talked about the many blind spots in hospital clinical servers. So you might be asking the obvious question, how do we deal with that? Well, we require agents? The answer is no, we're agentless, as I just said. Because of this connection with your firewall and seeing the traffic, we don't have agents. So when an adversary gets into your network and starts disabling some of your defensive measures or your EDR, MDR, it doesn't affect us. So any of your data, your packets, gets processed to us. We're not seeing the PHI data, but we are seeing that traffic from your clinical systems without requiring an agent. Being out of band provides a lot of meaningful value in this context, in this kind of post-prevention era, in some of the challenges that we're facing. Now, to talk a little bit more about the solution and how we do this, I'm going to turn it over to Carl.
All right, thanks, Vince. So I'm going to talk about how we address the other data breach challenges you mentioned. So Celerium has purpose-built the Data Breach Defender solution with a feature called Permitted Traffic Defense. And that addresses post-prevention, post-intrusion, post-blind spot, and this is the clinical server blind spots with agentless coverage, like you just mentioned. This involves 4 more steps. Step 2 is system registration. And this is where the hospital defines the specific clinical systems that hold or transmit ePHI. This step typically takes about 2 hours using a simple form or an automated upload. And it's usually handled by 1 or 2 people on the IT team. So for step 2, register those key systems, for example, your imaging or PACS servers, EMR or EHR platforms such as Epic or Cerner, departmental servers for pharmacy, labor delivery, and others. Now, if you go to the next slide, we get to step 3, which is called adaptive traffic profiling. And this is where Data Breach Defender really starts doing the heavy lifting for your IT team. Once those key clinical systems are registered, Data Breach Defender begins a 30-day analytical process, crunching millions of events in the firewall logs, which are summarized and combined. They're stitched together while simultaneously tracking and learning destination domains and IP addresses that each registered server is communicating with. So on the right-hand side, you can see the common potential types of systems and servers that are destinations for this example of a PACS system. But the adaptive profiling engine is processing this and will learn the specific destinations for your hospital-specific PACS system. So all of this that it's discovering, that all the routine permitted traffic is something that hospitals, CIOs, IT directors, the cybersecurity analyst teams, they don't have time to manually map or monitor all these destination domains and IPs to get visibility to this traffic. On the next slide, even before the initial baselining phase of the adaptive profiling process is complete, we're able to provide these hourly reports showing a comprehensive picture of outbound data traffic for all your internal IP addresses in your network. And more importantly, you can focus on all those registered systems. So this example is from a fictitious organization called Malibu Health System. And that's something that we've set up in our lab, and we use this to model real life traffic. So you can see on this screen exactly where data from a PACS system is going in terms of domains, associated organizations, and so forth, and all the other systems. But focusing in on this GE PACS that's highlighted there, you see that's the registered system name, GE PACS, and it's sending large volumes of data to a domain vrad.com, which is owned by Virtual Radiological, which is one of several permitted destinations that was discovered in that adaptive traffic profiling process. Note also that as part of our process, we are looking up the reputation of the domain and organization. We use third-party CTI services to do that, and this helps identify domains that are suspicious, or in this case, Virtual Radiological is trustworthy. So this dashboard eliminates the destination blind spots by giving IT teams real actionable visibility into the outbound data connections. You know precisely where outbound data is going, and Data Breach Defender is continuously monitoring this, whether that destination is permitted or not. Now let's look at what this process looks like inside a hospital's EMR or EHR system like Epic or Cerner. This is an example here on the right. You can see the major categories of systems that an EMR typically communicates with. But again, Data Breach Defender is using that adaptive traffic profiling engine to determine the destinations for your specific hospital EMR system. Also, Data Breach Defender is continuously learning about new and changing traffic patterns during and even beyond the initial baselining period of 31 days. This continuous automated learning cycle is what's called adaptive AI, which we're leveraging here. On the next slide, I want to just have one more example. It's a simple example of pharmacy, oncology, and other systems. Again, the numerous typical traffic destinations are on the right side there. And again, Data Breach Defender is automatically discovering the specific domains and IP addresses for the systems which you register. So after that initial baselining period and then the adaptive profiling period is complete, Data Breach Defender shifts from a learning mode to actively monitoring for any traffic going to unpermitted destinations. And the important part is Data Breach Defender doesn't really care about all the IP addresses. It doesn't care about the domain names. It doesn't get distracted by telemetry noise and other things. It cares about one thing: is the destination on the permitted list that was established and verified by your hospital's normal operations? Is it permitted or not? If the destination is not permitted, then Data Breach Defender immediately flags it as a permitted traffic exception. We call it a PTX, and these PTXs appear directly in your dashboard in our system for your registered critical systems. And Data Breach Defender automatically notifies the appropriate IT departmental staff. Now, the example on this slide is, of course, a PACS system, and it's normally going to send, MRI or DICOM image data to your standard radiology analysis partners. In this case, we're using, again, Virtual Radiological, and another one, Inland Imaging. So there may also be outbound traffic to GE healthcare domains, because it's a GE PACS system. So it could be requesting and confirming system updates and other traffic. But if we suddenly see that the GE PACS server is sending data to a domain, in this case, an example, nyradiology.com, which has never been observed before, then it's going to get flagged as unpermitted. Now, this step gives hospitals something they simply haven't had before: automated visibility into unpermitted traffic from critical systems. And it happens 24/7 without the analysts trying to chase down every domain manually. This is an example from a permitted destination exception screen. And you can see that the data breach activity is detected. You get a notification via email or Slack. It alerts you. You log into Data Breach Defender. You get this exception report. You can see that there was a probable data breach because you're sending data to nyradiology.com, which is not on the destination list. We also give you that suspicious warning in the domain reputation column there. Let's move quickly into step 5, which is response. So going back to my GE PACS system scenario, once Data Breach Defender identifies traffic going to an unpermitted destination, hospitals can choose how they want the system to respond. We have 2 options. We have surgical containment, which is blocking network traffic or the specific IP address, in this case for nyradiology.com, or another option is our isolation containment. This is a stronger response, which is based on integration with the EDR tool that you may be using. We currently support Sentinel-1 EDR, and we're working on CrowdStrike Falcon, but the EDR allows you to isolate, in this case, the GE PACS server, and that essentially quarantines the system from any other data exfiltration. So then going to the next slide, you can see how you can choose how you want that containment to work. Do you want it just to notify staff? Do you want it fully automated, either with the surgical IP blocking or the EDR case? Or the most common is human in the loop, where you get notified, you can analyze the situation, decide what containment option you want to use.
Carl, if I could here, per our previous discussion, so the human in the loop there, as we know, sometimes the human is actually the weakest link in the chain here. So if the action of preventing the breach depends on the notification of IT, and what happens if that point of contact is not available? As we know that time is of the essence. Is there a way to stop the exfiltration, kind of like a stop loss or backstop type feature?
The stop loss that you called it, we have something called human in the loop with deadline mode. And the way that works is you can set a backstop, as you put it, and analysis deadline for any critical server. For example, going back to the PACS server, you might have a 1-hour deadline, but if you have another system, you might, like pharmacy or laboratory, or might have a 2-hour or 3-hour deadline. So you can make it by server. And in that scenario, Data Breach Defender, of course, sends out the notification to the IT team, and that gives the analyst time to respond to the alert, do some review and analysis of the exception report that he's looking at. And the system's going to hold off on any automated containment response while that human in the loop analysis is going on. However, if there is no response and that deadline expires, Data Breach Defender automatically follows the containment policy you defined. So go do the isolation, do the blocking. So you can choose either or. So even if staff are unavailable, like you mentioned, John, or they're overloaded or they're not awake at 3 in the morning on a holiday weekend, your high-risk systems are still protected based on the rules you set.
I mean, really intriguing. Really, this is a great product in a kind of a last line of defense, assuming the adversaries in your systems and all your other defensive measures have failed to prevent the infiltration. We hear so much about third-party risk and the adversaries understanding mapping networks. So how does this system work if an attacker tries to steal information indirectly from a map server? So like through an intermediate server or a pivot server?
A lot of times, the data, the server that the data might be on, that's a very sensitive server, and so you may be monitoring that and kind of having folks watch what's going on there. And adversaries have learned that, and so they move laterally. So the adversaries rarely grab that data directly from the clinical systems, and they know that those systems are monitored more closely. And large amounts of outbound traffic raise red flags. So instead, as I said, they move laterally. They hop from an EMR server, EPHI server, into an intermediate pivot system. Things like your file servers or domain controllers, that's where they exfiltrate that data quietly. And this is where Data Breach Defender gives you another layer of protection. So Data Breach Defender doesn't just learn the permitted destinations for your clinical systems, it also learns normal outbound destinations for domain controllers and other key servers that the adversaries might be using as pivot servers. So when a threat actor tries to sneak data out through, say, your domain controller, maybe to a legitimate cloud service destination like Wasabi, Data Breach Defender immediately flags it as an unpermitted destination. And this actually happened recently to a hospital system that we're aware of, and threat actors can set up their own accounts on Wasabi. And a lot of hospitals use services like Wasabi for backup because it's affordable and efficient. And so the threat actors can create their own account legitimately on Wasabi and use it for illegal, unlawful activities. So this means even if attackers move laterally, even if they try to exfil data through a system where it might not be noticed to a legitimate destination, but not a permitted one for that system, Data Breach Defender still catches it. And if you go to the next slide, this is kind of what that looks like in the real world. Even if attackers don't pull directly from the clinical systems, they can steal it indirectly. And one of the most common paths is exfiltrated data through a pivot system like a domain controller. In this example, Data Breach Defender has flagged a probable data breach event on Malibu Health Systems domain controller. This alert is triggered because that domain controller attempted to send a massive amount of outbound data to a destination outside of its permitted set. And that's exactly the kind of stealthy exfiltration behavior that threat actors rely on, and exactly what traditional tools rarely catch. But because Data Breach Defender has already learned what normal looks like for your network, the trusted connect destinations for this domain controller, it immediately recognizes this as unpermitted and elevates it to a probable data breach. This is how attackers quietly steal data, hospital data indirectly, and this is how Data Breach Defender shuts that down.
And John, you mentioned earlier third-party breaches, right? And of course, we've always been concerned about that. But in light of the advancing threats, is there more concern for third-party breaches that we're seeing?
Absolutely. So I analyze the same data you all look at from HHS's Office of Civil Rights breach portal. The vast majority of the breaches come from network servers, not from the electronic medical record. And the vast majority of healthcare data stolen actually comes from third parties, business associates, and non-hospital healthcare providers. This is data we provide right back to the government to show that it's not always necessarily the hospitals directly being attacked, but it's our insecure third-party suppliers, business associates, and service providers.
No, very good. And Jeffrey, just based on what John just said, data breach for dinner for hospital, how's that strengthen the protections when it comes to those third-party providers?
Yeah, thanks for that, Tommy and John. Again, folks, as we talk about Data Breach Defender, you're hearing a lot about your organization, but we also know about third parties. We heard about Change Health. You can name the flavor of the day. There's a third party that's actually handling your data. But we encourage you to use this technology not only to defend your organization, but also encourage your suppliers, your business associates, to use this solution as well. So you can suggest to them in your BAAs, work with your legal team, your compliance teams, and say, hey, we have a security posture that we know what the HIPAA guidelines are, but we also have our own standards at our organization. So you certainly can use this technology with them so you can have that situational awareness for what's happening with your data, because ultimately you're responsible for using getting them to have the same security posture that you have. So we strongly suggest that you have them use this solution as well. So while we've been talking a lot about the technical controls, and we certainly understand that, IT is the person or the group that would actually implement the solution. But as we look and talk about who actually benefits from this, well, certainly IT does, because as you know, from a technology standpoint, when we talk about ransomware, which we haven't mentioned a lot today, but ransomware impacts this industry tremendously. But we also know the new flavor of ransomware is data exfiltration first and then encryption second. So what if you had a solution that could actually alert and block that exfiltration from happening? You wouldn't have a ransomware event. So again, IT benefits from this. But when you look at what's happening at your entire organization, a chief compliance officer, privacy officer, risk officer, you name it, we're talking about the the HIM folks on the call, you always have a stake in this as well. So it benefits you from a brand reputation, protecting that patient integrity and patient safety. When we look at that, the CMOs is involved in this. So again, this data breach defender solution totally protects your organization on a level that you typically don't see from other organizations, because as we heard before, they have blind spots. A lot of these solutions, you need to put an agent on your machine. Again, as Vincent said before, there are no agents required. So this is looking at your native logs, understanding when exfiltrations are happening, understanding solutions or systems that should not even communicate out to the internet. We know once they create beachheads, you've heard the term before, APT, advanced persistent threat, they get into your organization, they're very stealthy. However, this solution can detect that suspicious activity as well. And last but not least, ultimately, who's responsible? The CEO and the boards. This gives them the warm and fuzzy from a financial standpoint, brand standpoint. You understand that your data is being protected, where you have better patient safety, quality of care, limits your downtime. So there's a tremendous amount of benefit of your organization as well as your third parties to use our data breach defender solution. Back to you, Tommy.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. You can tell just by listening to everybody talk, some key values you get out of the product. One, speed. Data breach defender, it moves fast. We can spot unusual data movement early, so you can catch it long before EPHI starts to leave the building or ransomware even takes hold. And then automation. It automates the hard spots, right? Reduces load on your IT staff instead of adding more to it like a lot of tools do. So we're improving the protection at the same time. And then, of course, the financial impact, right? Fewer stolen records means lower breach costs, less disruption, fewer diversion. And, of course, reducing any reputational harm or reputational risk that may be occurring across your community. So you get speed, automation, lower costs, lower risk, higher operational resilience. All good. And the testimonials we're getting from our customers echo the same thing. Deployment takes minutes. Visibility is immediate. And the impact is dramatic. Often we have customers that are stopping unauthorized access in the first hour of implementing the product. Consistently, we hear that back home. So if you want to go ahead and join the other hospitals and get some real-time visibility into where your patient data is being sent, either to unpermitted or unauthorized destinations, the easiest way to do that is to start our 60-day free trial. Setup is fast, 30-minute implementation track. Your team can be up and running the same day. No hardware, no software, no heavy lift. So if EPHI, protecting that earlier, faster, with less burden for your overall staff matters to you, then here's how you sign up. And if you look on the next slide again, it just takes you a few minutes. Our team, I think, is putting that link into the chat. Just tell us who you are, confirm your technical eligibility, and then accept the term of service, and you're up and running. So in closing, I just want to leave you with one thing. In the hospitals, you're under a lot of intense pressure, direct attacks, third-party failures, stretched teams, tight margins, and the AI threat of the threat actors, definitely increasing. So everything we talked about today really talks to a simple solution: speed, automation, visibility. That's what makes the difference. So Data Breach Defender was really built to address all three of those without really adding any additional overhead or more staff. So it really doesn't matter your staffing model, whether you have a SOC, outsourced SOC, or the state of your vendors with your BAAs. DVD is designed to detect and contain that breach activity before it gets to be a crisis. So if you want to see that for yourself again, it takes about 30 minutes to set up. The link is in the chat. And before we go, let's see if we have any questions. The question is, and maybe we just need to clarify a little bit, how are we seeing internal traffic if it's firewall based?
So the firewall inside your network, or the external firewall in your network, is all the outbound traffic is going through there, and internal IPs that are the source of that traffic are going through the firewall and being written to the syslog, and that's what we're monitoring. So as Vince mentioned, and maybe Vince wants to go into more detail here, we're picking up that traffic through the logs.
Yeah, and I would just add in, we're focused on the north-south traffic is kind of how it's just typically described technically, because a data breach is going to involve a threat actor exfiltrating data or taking data off of your network. The lateral movements, we're not going to see because it's not coming in and out of your firewall. But as we talked about earlier, when they move laterally to a different server, and they try to exfiltrate data from that other server, we've profiled that activity already. And so no matter where they move laterally inside the network, they have to get out. It's a basic fundamental principle of the internet is that network traffic has to go from one IP to another. And so by looking at that north-south traffic and being able to monitor that and profile it in near real time, we help protect you.
Yeah, here's a good follow-up question to that too. So basically it's internet traffic, whitelisting with optional containment.
Whitelisting's been around for a long time, but this goes beyond whitelisting. So this is a permitted list, right? So the problem with a whitelist, if you go back to the example I think Vince just talked about, like with Wasabi, many hospitals use WasabiSys.com. They use it for backup. They use it maybe even for their PAC server. The problem is you're going to put that on a whitelist, but in Vince's example, it was a domain controller they were using that system, that server to exfiltrate the data, and they were doing it to Wasabi, and that was a deliberate. This was actually based on a real attack at a hospital over the summer, and Wasabi was thought to be fine, and you're seeing large amounts of data moving over to Wasabi. That doesn't usually ring any alarm bells, but in this case, the threat actor had actually set up their own account on Wasabi to steal the data. So it's very different than a whitelist. It's much more narrowly defined between the registered system and the server and the external domain that you're allowed to send data to. By the way, part of the adaptive process we're using involving AI and machine learning is we understand that the patterns, the amount of data, the time of day. So there's a lot going on to find that anomaly event that is a data breach activity, possible, probable, highly probable activity based on all the factors we're analyzing.
Yeah, Carl, if I may, and as I understand it as well, after our many discussions, you're using many characteristics of what constitutes baseline normal traffic to detect anomalous traffic. So as you said, could be going to a authorized domain, but time of day is off. The communication port might be off. The volume might be off. So standard whitelisting in traditional sense would not catch that. So really interested in Randall. Great questions. Thanks for joining today. I know we had some offline discussions. And I encourage folks, take the 60-day free trial. Let us know how they're doing. We're interested because we impart, as part of this program, quality control. We want to make sure that all our providers can deliver on their services. So we're very interested. And again, that's what makes this status valuable, is that we continue to monitor quality of service for our preferred providers as well. So thank you, gentlemen.
Well, I have a comment. I want the audience to please take heed to, as I mentioned about post ransomware, where now they are actually exfiltrating your data for double extortion. Then they're encrypting your systems. Just imagine again having a system that can actually detect and block that exfiltration, which also reduces the risk to your organization, which also reduces the risk to patient safety, so you can have better quality of care. So you look at this again, not just from a technical standpoint, but from an operational clinical standpoint of all the benefits of using this solution, where you get tremendous amount of value to protecting your organization, brand, reputation, and ultimately patient safety.
Okay, and again, John, thank you so very much. We'll be following up, a lot more to come. Any closing comments here for everybody?
Again, thanks for the partnership. And again, we'd like the field to test drive this. Give us the feedback. As you said, Jeffrey, it is an issue of the data is one thing. Protection and privacy and security of the data is one issue. But if this can help prevent a ransomware attack, which poses a direct risk to patient safety and community safety, then that's really where the tremendous value is. So again, thanks for the partnership, and we look forward to continue working with you in the field. Thanks all.
Yeah.